you've been in touch with Jimmy Donaldson, with MrBeast, a bunch of times. And he's actually someone early on in my YouTube journey. I was one of the many, many people that he reached out to, and I just got a random message from him on Instagram, and I'm like, hey, I like your stuff. Here's my number. Call me.
Was he asking you questions? You're asking him questions?
He was,
because they say whoever's asking the questions controls the conversation. So who was in the driver's seat?
He had more dominance in the sense that when I asked him a question, he's like, no, I don't care about that. I want to hear about you. Yeah, he was telling me how he set up the company, and like you need a head of creative, you need a head of production, you need this, you need that, and like he has like, I think at the time he had like 7 disciples. And those are the people that he talks to all the time, and they just own an entire department. And he's like, anyone can take this position, but they're going to have massive expectations, and most people just crack under the pressure. But when they make it happen, I don't care how much history they have, how much experience and whatnot. If they get the results, they get paid like tens of thousands of dollars per month. And yeah, it was just really inspiring. And then I remember one conversation I had with him. I just wanted to come prepared with something valuable for him. And I told him about this podcast called How to Take Over the World.
You told him about that?
Yes.
Amazing.
And later on, I saw them do the interview and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, my producer told me about it. I'm like, that's not true. I told him about it. But he was like, fuck yeah, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And since then, I think then they got in touch with you guys, right? And you've had MFM camp. And I think you've been, in touch with him. Like, what's your relationship with him now? Are you still?
So the story, I guess, is you told me the part I didn't know. You told him about How to Take Over the World, which is a podcast hosted by our buddy Ben Wilson. Ben at the time was the producer of my podcast, so he was getting his podcast off the ground, and he was producing our podcast. And so Jimmy liked his podcast. Jimmy got in touch with him. He asked him what he does. He was like, oh, I'm the producer for My First Million. So he followed us on Twitter. I then tweet out one time that here's what I want to do. I like meeting other business people, but I hate conferences. So here's the conference of my dreams. And I basically tweeted out something like, I want to host a basketball camp for grown-ups. And it'll be like 2 or 3 days. We'll get an NBA skills trainer. We just hoop all day, talk business at night. And like, that would be a lot of fun. And I put out a form of anybody who would want to sign up. And I see on the form, it's like email, Twitter handle, what are you supposed to put in? And one of them was at MrBeast, and then it was like his email address was like some like Yahoo or AOL email address. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's a hoax. Next day, so I don't even pay attention to it. Next day, he DMs me, and he's like, so are we doing this or what? And I was like, oh, what? That was you? That was for real? I didn't even know he followed me. And so I was like, yeah, not only are we doing this, where do you live? He's like, oh, I live out in North Carolina in this like small city. And I was like, what do you know? We're doing it there. We'll see you in a couple months. And so we then planned it around him, just to make it like easier for him to like not flake, basically. Because, we have a really great business network, but he was kind of unique because I don't know a ton of YouTubers, and I found him to be an interesting guy. So I was interested in having him be like at the event. So I was like, okay, we'll do it where he lives, and that's where I went to college. So I was like, let's go there. And so every year we do this basketball camp together. So we're friends. We don't talk every day or anything like that, but he's awesome, and I learned a bunch from him over time. He's a character. He's like one of these. It's like when you meet a Mark Zuckerberg and they're 22 years old or 24 years old, and like they're just built a little bit different and they operate differently, and they're just like they're a bit of a different species, and not totally different, but like there's something different about this breed of person. And like you said, the phone call was intense. I think that's a good way to describe it. Like he's intense about not in a mean way or anything like that. He's just intense in his like ambition and his like thirst for like entertainment and knowledge and doing cool things. He just has like a very low tolerance for wasting time or bullshit or like small talk or small think. He doesn't like small talk or small think.
Yes. There's one thing he told me. He was like, let me just get my AirPods real quick. I actually have a whole box ready. Like he had a whole like tray full of them,
just like a new AirPod.
so that he doesn't have to look for it, because sometimes he loses it and he has to look for it. So he just like opens a new one and just like pops it in.
Yeah, he's definitely like, you know, have you ever seen the movie? You guys might be a little young for this, but there's this movie back in the day called Richie Rich. And it was about this kid who was like wealthy. And because he was like, I think like his parents were gone, like his parents had died and he was wealthy. So it was kind of like the kid was running the show and he had all the resources in the world. And so he would, he just like any decision that made sense to him as a kid, he just did. So he like built a McDonald's play place in his house and he would like, you know, eat like chocolate bars for breakfast. It's like, what would a kid do? A kid would think that's the move. And so in a way, that's kind of happened to Jimmy, where like he runs his kingdom. And because he runs his kingdom, he's done all these really interesting, innovative things that like kind of aren't standard practice. Like you were talking about his disciples. So for example, like he would, when he hired somebody, he'd be like, all right, you're just my shadow now. You're just going to follow me around 24/7. And like, you know, for him, 24/7 is like more like actually 24/7. Like it's not like, oh, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's like on Saturday, like we would do something on Saturday night at 9 p.m. The person's there. And like, you know, they might have a family at home, but like they're here always. And he was like, yeah, you're going to shadow me until you know how I think. And then when you know how I think, you can now then do the things and I don't have to be there because you know how I think anyways. And like, that was his training method, which like, you know, a normal company would have like a very different training program and like, you know, some instructional videos and like some other bullshit. Right. So like, in some ways, his very simplistic thinking and his kind of like, well, I don't know any better, so I'm just going to do whatever makes sense to me, has led him to really good spots. And then I think it's also in some cases led him to like, you know, make some mistakes along the way where maybe experience would have helped him. But the dude is learning at such a fast rate that like, you know, whoever he was a year ago, he's a whole different animal now. And you just play that forward. I think he's only 25, 26 years old now. Like by the time he's 30, you know, he's going to have the experience of somebody with like 50 years of experience. And he's only been, you know, doing it for whatever, you know, 15 or something.
Dude, imagine you can see the future and find out which YouTuber or which like athlete is going to be the next big thing. Imagine how valuable that'd be, and then like supporting them on that journey. Like imagine how many people that know MrBeast now that would have known he was going to be this savage before, that would have been like, hey. Or imagine how many people like he tried to reach out to that said no to him, and now they're looking back and they're being like, damn.
But even then, even if you knew, all right, this guy's going to be really, really successful at YouTube, you really wouldn't have even still, like, what would you have done? What would you have done with that information? Because I think at the time, if you think about it, if you go back, the most successful YouTubers, like he's a billionaire. There wasn't billionaire YouTubers 10 years ago. So even if you knew, which was like, he's been doing this for 15 plus years now, even if you knew 15 years ago that this kid is going to become like, you know, one of the great YouTubers, you wouldn't have known that means there's $1 billion business underneath. You wouldn't have known the scale of how big that could get. Because I think at the time, you know, a big YouTuber might get millions of views on a video. He now gets 200, 300 million views on a video. You know, he's like one of the most recognized people in the world. So even if you knew, I don't think you would also need to know how big of a deal YouTube is, which I think was not obvious to a lot of people for a very long time. In the same way that podcasts kind of snuck up on people, where, you know, podcasting has been around since like early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, 2003. Like I was listening to a podcast, you know, back in like 2005. It's now 2025, so 20 years. But when I started my podcast 5 years ago, that was 15 years in, and it still seemed like a cute little side thing. I didn't think of it like this is going to be my new career and my launch pad, and I'm going to make millions of dollars from this. I had no idea. And then when it happens, it sort of surprises you. And I was still like really late in the game. So I think not only did you need to scout that he was good, you'd have to know that being a YouTuber would be such a big deal, which I don't think was true at the time.
But I think in 2013, because that's when when did David Dobrik really blow up?
No idea. I never really watched it, but I would guess 2017.
Really? That late? Because
maybe 2016?
Because early on, like during the Vine days, a lot of these YouTubers were still making a lot of money. Because one of my friends was a famous Viner, and as soon as Vine, he lost his whole entire.
What was a lot of money then?
Because I remember, I remember like a couple, like 50 to 100K a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're making less than $1 million a year.
This is like a different level with Jimmy now.
Yeah.
I think he's worth multiple billions of dollars, right? So it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's an order of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude difference. And like, you know, I know this guy, Taylor. And Taylor, I think he's talked about this on our podcast before, or maybe we talked about him, but He had a sock company and was like, you know what? This is like back in the day. He's like, he was making custom socks. And he's like, oh, I know. He's like, I don't know how to promote my sock company. I don't know anything about marketing, but I know that these YouTubers or Viners are getting really popular. And he noticed that Logan Paul, Jake Paul, all these famous Vine stars at the time, he noticed that the doors in their videos all had the same handle. So he's like, I think they live in the same building. And so he figured out which building it was in LA, and he moved to LA and rented a unit, like the smallest unit in that building, and started hanging out in the gym all the time. And Logan and Jake would come down and they'd work out all the time. And what's his name? King Batch or whatever. They would all work out every day, and he would be there every day. And he kind of like buddied up with them, and then was like, hey, Logan, like, I'd love to do your custom merch. Your merch kind of sucks right now, or you don't have socks, you don't have hoodies. Like, you should do that. And he did like the first merch run with Logan Paul. And he made like, you know, whatever. They did like, you know, $2 million in sales or something like that. Everybody thought it was like the craziest thing in the world. And so he kind of had the right idea, but even with the right idea that these guys are you know, popular or going to blow up, like that still wasn't enough to like really take advantage of the true opportunity with this stuff.
I see what you mean.
Which, like, you know, in Jimmy's case right now, and he's I don't think he's even at the peak of the peak, but like now the peak of the peak right now is like you create a consumer brand, right? So you create Feastables, you create, you know, whatever, Chamberlain Coffee, you create, you know, Crunch Labs, the subscription box, and now these guys have figured out like, oh, that can like take us to the next level. But there's even levels that are going to come beyond that.
Beast Games as well.
I've seen a lot of creators launch their own products, and I see it again and again where it just fails. They think because they have the traffic, then like, oh, I have all this traffic, but it's like you're starting a whole new business that you need to learn from scratch. And in the self-improvement niche, what I see a lot is that they start launching a paid community or a course or something like that, and then they just can't keep up with running both that and the channel, and then usually the channel ends up dying over the next few years.
Right.
And I don't know how Jimmy makes it work, but I think it's just...
Well, again, he's a freak. Like, we went with him to Walmart, and he's like showing us where the chocolate is. And I thought it's like an influencer. They're like, hi, you know my face, buy this. And then they put it down and they walk away. And like their manager just hands them shit. Like, hey, pick this one up. Okay, buy this. And I just thought that's how influencer products worked at that level of fame. Like, it's like, you know, Michael Jordan would hold up you know, a Gatorade bottle. I just thought it was at that level of involvement. Even Jordan brand shoes, like, sure, they would like invite him in a couple times a year to like the design meeting, and he would tell them what he likes and what he doesn't like. But like Jordan ran the company, Nike ran the company. They just used his name. They licensed the name off of him. I went to Walmart with this guy, and like literally while we're talking, he's restocking all the shelves. He knows everything about every SKU. He has a badge to go in the back of Walmart to restock his own product if he needs to, and he's done that. Like, he's been to like, you know, 50 retail locations and you know, he's so like intimately involved with the operations and the knowledge about like, he's like, yeah, we're changing from this size to this size because that we realized that the buyer on the floor of Walmart who manages this aisle is different than the buyer at the front desk where you get the minis, and so we needed to have different SKUs for that. And like the level of detail, you know, I met the guy, you know, probably 3-4 years ago now. At that time, he was like, oh, I'm Jimmy. I do a bunch of stuff. I have a chocolate brand, blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, I don't know if there's 5 people on earth who know more about the chocolate business than this guy. I would bet that there are not 5 people on earth. And and those people are not also the biggest YouTuber in the world. Their only job is chocolate. He's the biggest YouTuber in the world and knows more about chocolate than any of the chocolate companies. You know, it's insane.
Well, I think you said it yourself. You're like, when he had the 7 disciples that were following him around doing everything that he did, and they learned everything from him. I think that's the one thing that I see with the businesses that I work with. The number one skill that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is delegation. And it's like, how do I take my brain and put it into yours? And I think if you can do that successfully, consistently, then you can actually let somebody run the thing you're running right now. You can focus on a whole new business. And I think that's what makes successful entrepreneurs successful. Because the reality is that they can't make a replicatable process that is simple and dumbed down enough for somebody to actually just take it and copy it and take it to the next level.
I think that his is even at a different level. I think the number one skill, or one of the, I shouldn't say number one because it's like, I could say that for so many things, but one of the big skills of Jimmy is hiring and just his ability to build a team. And I think he's built a level of team where he doesn't do anything with process or systems. I don't know, but the people he hires, they just entrepreneurs in his business, and he he coaches them. He coaches how to think and instills this savage mindset that he has in this culture of like no excuses. I mean, you've seen the leaked document as well, right? Like that was a masterclass.
I'm not sure that that's true. I've been there I've come out and visited him every year for the last 3 or 4 years, and there's different people every time I'm there, right? Like I don't think that's. I think he churns through a lot of people because very few people can keep up with the pace. I think what he does is not that he hires great people and delegates to them. I think he pushes straight forward ahead like a heat-seeking missile, and either you're on board and you're helping and you make it happen, or you fly off and a new person gets on board and they help make it happen. But he is just pushing at a rate that nobody else pushes, and goes deeper than I think anybody else goes. He's got a few trusted people for sure that like he trusts to do X, Y, and Z. But when I live in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of companies here you look at and you say, wow, it's amazing. They really built an organization. This is an organization. You know, it's not the CEO isn't making product decision, isn't involved in this. They're not even aware of this stuff. They sit at the top of the board, at the boardroom table, at the top floor of the office. They don't really know what's going on at the low levels. That's not what I see when I go to his place. But that's not a knock on him either. I think, I just can't believe he's got the energy to do it. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah. I think.
By the way, did I sidetrack your podcast and start talking about business?
No, this is
what
perfect.
we want.
We want both. We want both. So this is great. I think the ability or the willingness to let go of people, new one. Let go of people, new one. Like who's going to survive this? That's part of this the hiring skill. Like he told me about a 12-month period they had in the business where they hired a bunch of people from TV and that had, they had experience and all that. And then 12 months later, they let go of everyone and started like basically built the team from scratch again, like that whole department. And he learned so much from it. And just the willingness to do that, I think. Yeah, but I think you put it right. Like he's just a heat-seeking missile, and just like either you're on board or you fall off.
And he's constantly taking risks. If you hear in his videos, he constantly takes all the money and reinvests it in his videos. So he's like always, in the beginning, I feel like he was always going back to zero. I think it was a video where he was talking to his mom and he's like, he just made like $150,000. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to reinvest it in my next video. She's like, aren't you going to save anything? He's like, no. Like, we're just not going to do that. I'm going to keep $10,000 so I can do what I need to do for my life and my bills. But the rest is going back in the video. And he just constantly has done that over and over and over again. And I think that for me is the most impressive thing because you're just constantly willing to bet on yourself every single time.
So I think a lot of people say that, and very few people actually do it. Like Elon is one who's obviously did it. He sold when PayPal sold. I think he got something like $180 million, and then ended up putting like I don't know the exact math, but it was like something like 60 into Tesla, something like 100 into SpaceX, and then like 20 into Solar City, and was like, cool, can I crash on your couch now? I don't have any money. I don't have any cash. And so that's like. I live in the place of all the freaks. I live in Silicon Valley. This is like the most ambitious, wealthy, creative, technical people in the world are here. What does Rogan say? Like uncommon amongst uncommon men. That about David Goggins. That's kind of like an Elon. I think Jimmy's the same way, where it's easy to say believe in yourself, bet on yourself, reinvest, but like to that level, all right, that's like a very different level. And I'll give you a quick story. So. I was talking to this investor here, and he was looking at investing in MrBeast's company. And I think the leaked online stuff, so this is just what's out there publicly. I don't know if this is true or not. Let's just use the public number. Was that it's a $5 billion valuation for his company. And so he was like, he's like, I really like what he's doing. He's obviously an impressive guy, but it's already at $5 billion. Like, I just don't know if it's a good investment. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, well, I think I'm going to invest. And he goes, what's your kind of thesis? I go, oh, it's really simple. I can explain to you in the next 2 seconds. Jimmy's one of the most talented people I've ever met. And to him, $5 billion is a small number. And it kind of, I almost didn't even really realize my case to myself at the time. But it is very true for most of us, me included, but almost everybody, every YouTuber. If tomorrow Hershey's came to him and offered $5 billion for Feastables, 99.9% of people are taking that deal. Jimmy's not thinking for a second about that. Like to him, if this ends at $5 billion, that would be a disappointment to him. So you take the most talented person who's like really like a super fast learner, super hardworking, balls to the wall in terms of their intensity. But then the most important last variable is the standard they have for themselves. And for him, 5 billion would be a disappointment if that's where this ended. So you can almost always invest in somebody who's like, they have the horsepower at the elite level. And to them, this would be small. That's like actually like a very important thing. And it made me realize that like one of the big arbitrages of life, and this is kind of like to your like self-development things, like I think one of the most powerful self-development ideas that I haven't really heard talked about very much is one of the great differences in life and people is just what they are willing to accept in their life, what they're willing to tolerate for themselves. And so, you know, you might like, sometimes I'll meet a really talented person and I'll offer them a job and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And other times I meet a really talented person and to them, the idea, no matter how amazing my job is, the idea of working for somebody else would be a disappointment for them. They want to be an entrepreneur. And the talent difference between those two people is really nothing. And they're both going to work hard. They're both going to work, 8 to 10 hours a day. They're going to give it their all. But the second person is simply not willing to accept not building their own successful business. That would be it would be a disappointment to them if their life ended up where that wasn't true. And the first person was totally happy to accept not doing that. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. What I'm saying is that difference of just what you're willing to accept in your life makes a huge difference.
Do you think his main value or core value is purpose?
Winning. It's just winning.
Winning, yeah, it's the game. It's like
he's a game player. This is a game, and he wants to win, and he just loves winning.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's not a judgment.
Yeah.
I think he literally even said that. Like he's like, I think he just told me that the last time we were hanging out. And he's like, that's what I give a shit about, and everything is built around that, and that's what I want to do.